Howdy everyone. We're going to do another little book review today. This time we're doing Reaper's Gale. It's the 7th book in the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson, of course. And I've committed to eventually doing a little video for each of these books, so even though it's taking 10 million years, we're continuing on. The last one we did was so long ago, I don't even know. Like, was it over a year ago? Maybe. And I think it was actually not book 6 that we talked about, Bone Hunters. I think we were talking about Return of the Crimson Guard by Ian C. Esselmont, which is kind of one of the sort of side novels of the Malazan series. And it's really good. I recommend actually reading that before this one. But if you do want to jump from Bone Hunters to Reaper's Gale, that's not a huge issue. I just recommend reading Return of the Crimson Guard afterwards. But I kind of think it's a little better to read first. Anyway, so it's been so long, we're going to do our best to talk about it a little bit here. Actually, I went to this Chinese fantasy movie the other day, which was called Creation of the Gods Part 1, Kingdom of Storms. And it was surprisingly decent. And it just made me kind of think of Malazan stuff. It is not as good as Malazan, but it was pretty decent. And I just thought, hey, maybe I should make another one of these videos. So why don't we do it? Okay, so Reaper's Gale. This is another, 5 out of 5 book. It's another tank, 1,200 pages or so. It's really good. It's really, really awesome. There's a lot of development that's happening in the series. There's a lot of movement towards the grand convergence of the whole series. A lot of people getting into position. And you know what? It's another complex book, so it's going to be a little hard to talk about because my memory's a little fuzzy, but I'm going to do my best here. So the first thing is that this basically takes place on continent number 3. So Midnight Tides, book 5, all took place in this location, and there was this big kind of war between the Tista Idur and the Lether Empire. The Tista Idur crush the Lether Empire, and they basically take over the empire, or the kingdom, or whatever. It's an empire now. They're definitely expanding. So Rulad, he's the new emperor. And he, of course, has the cursed sword that he got from the crippled god. And basically, with this powerful sword, every time he dies, he comes back and he's stronger. So, the Tista Idur forces, with their kind of Lether supplementary forces that is now part of this whole conglomeration, they're out traveling the world trying to find champions to fight their emperor and give him a good challenge. And that's why in earlier books some of these ships have kind of had some encounters with other parts of the Malazan world, including Malazan Empire forces. And of course that leads to the Malazan Empire kind of coming in this direction, or at least the forces under Tavor. So you'll remember in Bone Hunters, these Lether forces scoop up Karsa Orlong and Ikariam, 2 of the most hardcore dudes in the Malazan series so far, and they're bringing them to fight Rulad, the emperor. So that's going down in this book, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but there's obviously a lot of excitement and tension about that. Like, oh, what's going to happen? Is Akariam going to fight the Emperor? Is Karsa Orlon going to fight the Emperor? Are they both going to fight the Emperor? Is the Emperor going to defeat one or both of them? Or is one of these guys going to defeat the Emperor? And what's going to happen? So that part's very interesting. They do a good job building up suspense for it. I won't spoil kind of how it all pans out, but in my opinion, it was a good, satisfying resolution to that aspect of the story. Now, one thing with that in particular is, they kind of get into position, so to speak, relatively early in the novel. And you'll know from reading other Malazan novels, Erikson has to weave all these different groups and characters and plot lines together for the grand finale of each novel. And basically all the pieces on the board have to be in place. Now, because these two guys get into position for the grand finale relatively soon, there's not a ton of forward momentum with regards to their stories. They kind of spend a lot of time sort of hanging around and talking to people, and it's not boring or anything. It's just, until the time comes, they don't have too much going on. But there is a lot of other interesting stuff going on in this book to round things out. The only reason I mention that is because obviously that's going to be one of the things you're most interested in. Erikson's just going to make you wait quite a while for it. Now, what else is going on? So there are, of course, different stories in this. So in the Lether Empire, in the capital city, of course, the Tistadadur have taken over, but they're basically still interfacing through a lot of the officials and the bureaucracy and stuff of the former human government. And one aspect of the storyline is kind of like these secret police that are kind of taking out traitors, and there's, different motives and different stuff going on there. That's all pretty interesting and well done, and kind of interacts with a lot of different parts of the city and other kind of characters like, it's complicated, but the secret police part storyline I think is really good. It's very grim, quite dark. There's a lot of cruelty and some messed up violence that happens, but at this point you kind of know what you're expecting. It's just, it's a brutal series, and that storyline is particularly brutal and ugly. A lot of ugly people involved. Now, let's see, what else have we got? There's the former Warlock King, and he's kind of still up to something. So his whole storyline is pretty interesting. I guess I won't, again, don't want to spoil things too much, but let's see. There's Tehol and Bug. So Tehol's trying to bring down the government, or the economy basically, by kind of expanding credit and setting up this huge crash. Kind of this house of cards, economically speaking, and that's kind of the way he's trying to take down the system. So that part's well done. It was kind of started up in Midnight Tides, and it's more coming to fruition in this book, and it pans out in a pretty interesting, enjoyable way. And along with him, of course, there's Bug, who we learned is actually the god of the sea. And so he's got a big role to play in the way he's interacting with different kind of pieces on the chessboard. Quite a bit going on. That part's all good too. So we've got a few good storylines to start us off with. Then, let's see. Okay, there's this whole campaign on kind of like the eastern part of the territory against this guy called Red Mask. And he's basically trying to lead his people again, and he's got two of the dinosaur dudes with him, and so he's this mysterious character. Like, why does he have the two dinosaur guys with him? But they're fighting against the Lether Empire, so there's this kind of military campaign on the eastern part of the country, or the empire. So that's a whole storyline too. It's pretty crazy and interesting. And in some ways, it's like, how does this kind of tie into the whole series? Like, what's going on here? Or how does this tie into the bigger plot of the book? And you'll just kind of have to follow along. But it's kind of like an interesting military storyline within like the bigger story. And it's going to give you some interesting connections as it goes to other things that have been happening in some of the other books. You'll see how it kind of comes together later on. And you're going to have, some answers, but also some questions once it gets to that point. But it's good. I really enjoyed it. The military like aspect of it was very interesting. And, there's some, the Lether guys, they're like, oh, well, Red Mask, like, we got to go beat him. Anyway, kind of rambling about that, but that part was good. I enjoyed that a lot. And okay, so then one of the big quests of this novel is Fear Sengar, and you'll remember from Midnight Tides that he's basically teamed up with that kind of the ranger lady Saren, that undead orphan girl Kettle, the slave Udinus, the Shadow Wraith Wither, and Silchus Ruin, the godlike Tista Andy albino guy. And they're on a quest to get Scabandari Blood Eye's eye. Like his soul, not his eye. Because, there's a lot of power within it. There's, some secrets to uncover. There's some pretty interesting characters that are going to kind of intersect with them along the way. Their storyline's very good. It's a good quest. It's pretty interesting. One other thing, kind of like the way the Icarium and Karsa Orlong's story kind of moves slowly, their quest kind of moves a bit slowly too, because they basically, it's one of those things that you'll get in a lot of epic fantasy books. There's a lot of walking, there's a lot of traveling, there's a lot of talking. And I think Erikson does the whole travel thing, like the party traveling, better than most. He's good at advancing the characters and the story through the dialogue and little bits of information that emerge through those conversations and dreams and traveling to different places. It's good. But they need to kind of get into position with a certain timing in order to make it all work. So, in my opinion, they do kind of get to their destination, more slowly, but it's because it's spread out across all these other things that are happening at the same time. I'm just mentioning that because, maybe in some ways this book is not frustrating, but a little, I don't even want to say slower. It's just, seems like it may be slightly less elegant the way it's getting everything into position. So then, there's a lot more going on in this book, but one of the things you want to know about is the Malazan forces. They are, under Tavor anyway, they are going to reach the third continent in this book, and then there's going to be a big epic kind of military campaign as they're moving through the territory, fighting the Lether forces. Because remember, this is in Bone Hunters after the encounter with the Lether fleet. Hopefully you kind of remember what's up. It's been quite a while for me, but Tavor knows something's up. People kind of get a sense that she knows something's up, but she's not necessarily revealing everything she knows. She's just kind of tuned in to something bigger that's going on, and the Malazan guys they're on board, even though they don't necessarily know what it's all about. So Tavor's going to continent number 3. She's bringing her fleet with them. They have those big warships. So they're going to basically invade the island, or the continent, and take the battle to the Lether Empire, and it's going to be crazy. That's part of the whole convergence that goes down. Makes up a big part of the latter part of the book, like the whole military campaign as they're moving through the land, and there's a lot of different squads. fun characters, interesting characters, tangling with different bad guys along the way. Some really explosive, like intense clashes, especially towards the end as it's just kind of ramping up. They have kind of like a few critical moments where it's like, how are they going to get out of this? They're doomed. But, you know, things don't end in this book, and of course lots of people are going to die, lots of main characters. As far as defining main characters in this series goes, a lot of valuable, interesting, likable characters do die along the way, but that's par for the course with Malazan. On that point, there are a number of characters who you lose in this book, and you may wonder if they had a satisfying end. Now, Erikson does like to kind of change what you would expect, or he kind of likes to play with expectations where, how do I put it? Let's just say, for some of the importance of some of the characters and like kind of the esteem they've earned for perhaps us as readers, maybe some of the ways they die, it almost seems like the guys who kill them didn't really deserve to kill characters that were that important. And it's almost like some of the deaths are a little bit anticlimactic, but that's not necessarily unusual for what the Malazan books usually do. They have a lot of that stuff. It's just, there was a few moments in this book where you might think, did that really happen? Like, did he just really die to this guy? And it's kind of like a gut punch, and sometimes, you think you're going to get a happy ending with some character, and then he ends up dying anyway, and I mean, it's just the brutal world of Malazan. What can you say? But honestly, I did feel a few times there, I think one character in particular, and you'll probably know maybe who I'm referring to by the time you get to the end of the book, he dies, and you'll think, either you kind of wish he'd had a happy ending, or you'd wish he'd like kind of had a cooler way to die. I don't know. That's just me, and I don't want to spoil anything, so we won't go into too many details to kind of like give criticism, which I don't really want to do because it's still an awesome book. I'm just, kind of nitpicking, or I guess giving a review of sorts. So I don't usually have too many negative things to say, and I'm not negative about this book at all. I'm just sort of nitpicking a little bit. Now I think that's about it. Now there is lots of stuff with Quick Ben, which you're gonna like. There's lots of stuff with Onrak and Trull, and they're on a quest, and they're gonna pick up some no spoilers, but they're gonna pick up some friends along the way. So I don't know, I guess I'll leave it at that. So it's another awesome book. It has an awesome ending. It has lots of good stuff along the way. Just, I guess, if you want to be critical in any sense, it's not that it's a slower book, it's just maybe there's a few things that are a little less efficient than some of the other books. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm just not remembering it that well, but I'm just trying to like go back to my experience reading the book. Anyway, this is going to set up some major stuff for later in the series, but the next one you do in Book of the Fallen is Toll the Hounds, which is actually going to take you back to continent number 1, where the whole series started. There's going to be a lot of characters there from all the other different books, including, characters that you started with in book number 1. And so it's going to take you back to Darujistan, and some of that kind of surrounding territory, and you're going to kind of see the aftermath of Memories of Ice, and it's a really good dark book. You're not going to be back at continent number 3 until later. And so, as far as kind of leaving you off with something awesome on continent number 3, this book delivers the goods. Does a really good job with the build up, and all the things it's bringing together are, I'd say, 99% satisfying, with maybe a few things at the margin that might rub some people the wrong way, but I'd still give it an A or a 5 out of 5, whatever. So awesome book, and what else can you say? It's good. We'll try to do Toll the Hounds next someday. Or then again, maybe we should do Stone Wielder next. We'll do one of those, either Stone Wielder or Toll the Hounds. And I guess I'll see you in the next video. That's it. Bye for now.